the next 15 minutes or so about the importance of having help as we move our careers forward. So when we think about our project work, we work really well together as teams. We solve our project problems, we solve our product problems, we solve our delivery problems. But how much of that help, how much of that support is actually helping us develop our skills, our abilities? So I want to share with you 3 different roles that can greatly enhance our professional development and personal development. The first are mentors. If you think about a mentor is just somebody who has learned something that we don't know, and they can share that with you. Each one of you has a unique life experience, a story, a trick, a tip that I don't know. But I'm never going to learn that unless I talk to you, unless I listen, unless I find a way to learn those lessons. So as you're networking, don't network just to build up your LinkedIn profile and your reach, but think about this as an audience that might be able to help you by sharing something that you don't know today. If we take mentorship to the next level, we have a coach. And the difference with a coach is it's a more formal relationship. When we think about a coach, we are working with somebody that probably has a little higher progression in their career in a specific area, and they're going to help us develop it. So we are actually targeting potential goals. And not only are they helping us refine our goals and where we want to get to, but they're helping us script the critical steps to get there, to make sure the effort we're putting in is going to take us to the destination that we actually want to go to. And we want to look for coaches not just in our domain, not just in our particular role, but also look for different perspectives. My lifelong or career-long coach is a great man named Dusty Rhodes, not the wrestler, who is probably the best product marketing and simplification guy I have ever met. And I'm teaching him to be the smartest old guy with computers. And Dusty's been able to help open up a whole new perspective, a whole new way of thinking about problems, about business challenges. So rather than reaffirming my confirmation bias, he's actually opening my horizons and my knowledge. So I encourage you to find coaches. You may have a formal coaching program with your companies, you have professional organizations that provide those services, or just look at people you respect, people you might want to learn from, and ask them. Go to lunch, grab coffee, find a way of gleaming some of the information that they can share with you. But probably the most important role that I want to share with you is one that I didn't even know existed, and I discovered kind of late on in my career, which is the work spouse. And I know a few of you are already cringing, going, all right, buddy, we have HR policies against work spouses. I'm not talking about a romantic relationship. What I'm talking about is imagine a coaching relationship where both people bring equal value to the relationship, and they operate with transparency and brutal honesty to help confront those challenges we have and to help just cut through things. And for me, the person who helped me discover the importance of a work spouse was John Whitman. And as you can see, we are nothing alike. I'm a city boy who's followed an academic and corporate route for most of my career. I couldn't decide what to get my doctorate in, so I decided to pick up a master's in education while I was waiting and trying to decide. And I've just kind of followed that city boy life. John here is a good old country boy, redneck from LA. And by LA, I mean Lower Alabama. He grew up stomping around in the swamps, hanging out, fishing, doing other outdoor activities, and took what we might dismiss as a more blue-collar approach. He worked his way up in restaurants, became a restaurant manager, eventually became a Chili's regional manager, and had the highest satisfaction, highest productivity, highest profit per store across any region in the US year after year after year. And after that success, he got a little bit burnt out, started a construction company, ran that for a couple years, and then ended up deciding that he was going to go and help a buddy of his straighten out a warehouse problem that they're having. So as you can see, John and I had nothing really in common. And we met through friends and ended up becoming friends ourselves. John and I were stomping around, like to stomp around in the woods together, and we usually would get dinner on the way back. And John was the kind of person that you could tell just didn't miss things. So we're sitting down at dinner at one of these restaurants, and he just starts to get that gleam in his eye. And he just starts staring at different parts of the restaurant and focusing and watching people. And I said, you've already figured out 8 different things to fix in this restaurant, haven't you? And he's like, kind of cocks a grin, he's like, I stopped counting at 12. Because John was the best operating and people manager I've ever met in my life. He could see the process. He could see the flow and the dynamics between people and processes and the tools they were using and how they needed to fit together, and why certain actions that we thought would help were actually hindering the process. Have we heard that before? That some teams are independently successful, but as a group, we're failing in our key goal? I had to read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team to learn that. For John, it just came natural to him. And John and I both had a period of challenge in our lives, where John ended up taking over the warehouse, as I mentioned. And when he started this, the warehouse was a mess. They had problems in each of their different departments. And one of the first things we started discussing is, where do you start? Do you start from the top down, and does he go all the way up to the president and focus and say, hey, here's all the changes and these need to happen at once? Does he start with an individual department and fix it and then slowly spread these changes and move from department to department until he's fixed, which might take a lot longer to get done? And ultimately what he decided was he couldn't really force the change across the culture. So he immediately identified that change is about identifying the culture and what an organization is going to accept or adapt to. So he decided to start in the shipping department. And he straightened out and streamlined the shipping department so all shipments were going out in time. But he didn't want to just fix the problem. He wanted to expose the problems that existed between departments. So he intentionally fixed them in a way that would expose every place there was a process gap, so that things would break and show where the process or the people or the tool was broken. Not to blame, not to get somebody fired, not to get them in trouble, but so that people would finally understand that how their actions were impacting others. In the restaurant business, bussing tables is a huge pain. And if any waitress or waiter bussed a table and put the dishes in the wrong spot, he made them work 2 entire shifts washing dishes, so that they could see that simply not following a basic process caused a huge backlog and a huge disruption and tons of extra work for the dishwashers. And he did that in any job. If you caused a problem in someone else's jobs, you walked that next shift in their shoes until you understood what that impact was. And that was one of his core philosophies, and one that I've tried to adopt moving forward. So as John moved from department to department and started improving things, he had his setbacks, he had his challenges, he had his frustrations, but we were able to work through those. He would tell me stories, and sometimes I would be the sounding board for him. Sometimes he would present a problem, and we would brainstorm and figure out different ways of doing it. And that's how our work-spouse relationship came together. Each of us sharing stories, each of us drawing on each other's experience, each of us looking for ways to improve how we were doing things. And John, especially when I would be telling stories, every once in a while he'd cock his head and look at me and goes, you know you ain't right. And it was his almost catchphrase to tell me, stop, you're going down that rabbit hole again, or you're going off the deep end, or you're trying to do something and you don't realize that they just don't understand where you're trying to take them. And it was my chance to reset in a safe space and then go back, and I was so much more productive. During that same time period, it was probably the second greatest challenge I've had in my career. I was starting up a new delivery organization with really high constraints, and one of those cannot fail scenarios. Don't we all just love those? Hey, no matter what we do to you, you still can't fail. This is mission critical. And these projects, building up a team, trying to execute these projects, trying to change the tires on the bus while it's rolling down the highway, and you just never seem like you're going to get caught up. So I did what probably all of you would end up doing. What do you do when you face challenges like that? You work longer, you work harder, you do more, you give up your weekends, and you just say, if I could just get over this next hump, everything will be okay. If I could just get past this next challenge, things will get evened out. But for me, that just wasn't happening. We were solving those challenges, and I felt validated that the leadership philosophy that I had always come up to believe in, I was able to put into practice and see that it was really working. So I was happy, but then I just kept seeing all of these humps, all of these challenges, all of these things that just kept looking like failures to me. So I dug in even harder. I started focusing in and saying, all right, maybe this model isn't working. Maybe my decisions aren't right. Maybe I didn't bring the right people onto the team. And that led to our wonderful cycle of doubt. I started to have doubt in everything I was doing because I kept seeing the challenges and I kept seeing this bounce up. And then that doubt started turning into fear. Because now I was scared. I had so much on the line. This was my career, this was my reputation, this was my team that I had brought together. Their success was now tied to my success because we had built it that way. And that fear and that doubt kept building up and building up. And unfortunately, it ended up building up to a level that I started losing my battle with depression. And it not only was affecting me at work, but it started carrying over at home. I became a miserable jerk to be around. I wasn't happy, I was struggling, I was stressed. Every little thing would set me off for no reason. There is a correct way to load a dishwasher. You put like items together, and then you can take them all out at once and put them away. It is simple. Why can't everyone in our household follow this? I don't know, but I had to give that up too. And it got so bad that I'd wake up in the middle of the night panicking about something that was going on. And I'd work for a couple more hours. How many people have ended up doing that? You work for a couple hours. You're like, okay, I can almost get an hour's of sleep before I have to go sit in 2 hours of traffic to get to work. And this cycle was really, really burning me out, and I didn't realize it because it was so small, it was so incremental. Day to day, it just seemed natural. But looking back at it over that entire year, I realized how tough it was. I can't remember what set me off. I can't remember exactly what happened. But I do remember the moment that everything came crashing, and finally things clicked. It was a Friday night. I was sitting in my favorite reclining chair. TV was on, but I don't know what was playing. I don't even know if I was really even watching it. But something happened, and all of a sudden, I started crying. And I don't cry. I was raised not to cry, but I started crying. And within a minute, I couldn't stop. And I had a complete and total breakdown that was so bad, my wife turned the TV off and was like, all right, you're freaking me out. What's going on? Because I always do my best not to share any work problems with my spouse because we just don't need that. We got enough of our own problems. They don't need to deal with that. I'll push that off to somebody else. And somehow the floodgates opened. And I started telling her first about a couple challenges I was having. And then about how I thought I was a complete failure because everything was falling apart that I was trying to build over that last year. And it just kept going, and I just kept spilling. I don't share that way normally. And then the second thing clicked, because at some point in that conversation, I started thinking about John, and started talking about him, and him related to the challenges I was facing. Two things had happened during that year. First, one of my lesser work spouses ended up leaving our company, joining another great opportunity, but I lost that internal perspective over the changes and the things that were going on. About 9 months before that complete breakdown, John and I had been stomping around in the woods, and we had to cut it short that day because he had been dealing with a cold and just didn't feel like being out anymore. So luckily he went to the doctor to get checked out because he thought, all right, this is probably pneumonia. I need to get on something more serious. Unfortunately, the doctor said it wasn't pneumonia. He had stage 4 lung cancer after a year of smoking. Years of smoking. We had less than 2 months to say goodbye to him. I had not realized how much I had depended on him, how much of my load he had been carrying, he had been helping. He had been saying, hey, you ain't right. Get back to what matters. And maybe even more importantly, how much my validation, my value, was based on how much I had been able to help him as well. Because we had worked through these challenges together. We had been part of the team. and I didn't realize how much I was relying on him. And that's when I first realized what the importance of a work spouse was. And unfortunately, we can't dump this on our real spouses. It's not fair to them. And most of all, it's because our spouses have one job, our partners have one job and only one job, and that is to lie to us. It is their obligation to lie to us to make us happy. They don't care about solving our problems. They want us to be happy. So whatever it takes, our happiness is the goal. They're not acting like John, saying, you know you ain't right, and holding us accountable, forcing us to confront those things, forcing us to solve those problems, and not giving us any leeway to push it down the road anymore. So that's one of the reasons I think a work spouse and a work spouse relationship is so critical. And it's got to be based on three things: mutual trust, full transparency, and more than anything else, mutual value. If both people aren't contributing and getting mutual value from the relationship, you probably have a coaching relationship. Even if it's a joint coaching relationship, unless you have mutual value, you have not found a work spouse. So my challenge to you after you leave this morning is I want you to start interviewing work spouses in your life. I want you to look to the people that you have a trust-based relationship. Look at the people you respect. Look at the people that you think you might be able to have that type of relationship with. And I want you to start finding them and start building them into your lives and see where it goes. Because, like John was to me, it makes all the difference in the world. So I want to thank you for coming out this morning. Happy to answer a couple questions.
Hands up. Someone there?
Two quick questions and then we'll break so we get back on.
No, I wanted to ask a question. I wanted to comment,
okay.
But you go over here, please.
Go ahead. 1, 2, 3. Starts off. Did you have something? Yes.
No.
Okay. Okay. Trust, transparency, value. So if you think about all the qualities we look for in a relationship, but in a professional setting where you're setting up a mutually beneficial coaching relationship to help each other. But if you don't have trust, you can't say those difficult things. You can't have crucial conversations. If you don't have transparency, are we really solving the core issues? You know, this isn't to make us feel better, this is to solve stuff. And then the mutual value, and that's the one I've struggled the most on, to be honest. I found people that I can help. I found people that can help me. Finding somebody like a John, like other pseudo work spouses that I had in the past, finding something that we had a mutual benefit has been the hardest part. Yes?
And with the work spouses, they don't necessarily have to physically work with you.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, John was in a warehouse. We talked on the phone when we were stuck in traffic. We got together on the weekends or watched football together. It was completely separate. I did have a work-based work spouse, which gave me an internal perspective, but the value proposition was always off. I was always doing more to support and help them grow. And honestly, as they took what I had done to help them advance and move their career forward and ended that relationship, that was hard for me to deal with as well. Because it's like, dude, I helped make you, and now I need some help and you're gone. That's why that trust has to be there, and it has to be mutual value, or it can actually hurt sometimes even worse.